Greetings, seekers of alternative truth in this madhouse called Mexico. Welcome to this corner where, unlike others, we actually use our brains. Get ready for this feast of political cynicism. Today, reality has set the table for us with a buffet of double standards and hypocrisy that even I couldn't have made up in a dark comedy script. Get your antacids ready because what's coming isn't suitable for sensitive stomachs or for minds that still believe in the fairy tale of the second phase of transformation and sovereignty. Let's break down the latest little gem coming from the empire, the one that's got more than a few people in the national palace looking for a place to hide their heads like ostriches. The United States government is accusing and requesting the extradition of the sitting governor, Rocha Moya, along with other officials from the Sinaloa government. Let's get into it. Stop everything, hold the presses. It turns out that according to the gringos, those nosy neighbors who always seem to notice what we sweep under the rug here, our distinguished and very honest governor of Sinaloa, Rocha Moya, wasn't exactly focused on planting vegetables or improving rural roads. No, sir. According to the Southern District of New York Prosecutor's Office, Mr. Ruben and his select group of 9 officials were actually the logistical facilitators of one of the most lucrative and deadly enterprises in the world, the Los Chapitos faction of the Sinaloa cartel. We all already knew this in this country, but it was always denied by the Fourth Transformation government. In fact, they even defended him, including the same fool from Macaspana, Lopez Obrador, and some shameless people still defend him. What a surprise. Nobody expected it. It's almost as if the journalistic investigations that had been implicating him for years were more than just hallway gossip or attacks from the conservative press. But of course, since in Mexico justice is slower than a turtle with rheumatism, unless it's about going after opponents, like in the case of Maru Campos, it had to be Prosecutor Jay Clayton and the DEA who came to tell us what even the dogs in Culiacan already knew. The accusation is a true ode to bureaucratic efficiency put at the service of evil. Accompanying Rocha Moya on this honor roll, we have people like Enrique Insunza Cázares and Gerardo Mérida Sanchez. They are accused of using their humble public positions for the trafficking of industrial quantities of illicit substances, and in exchange for what? Well, for some modest million-dollar bribes. Because, let's be honest, who can live on a public servant's salary these days with this inflation? You have to look for some extra income, right? But the crown jewel is the mention of how Rocha Moya came to power in 2021. Something that, of course, was also an open secret. The American prosecutors claim that her election was not exactly a triumph of pure, crystal-clear democracy, but rather the result of the Sinaloa cartel kidnapping and intimidating her political rivals. What a way to run a campaign. Now that's machine politics, but with serious firepower. The indictment details a level of customer service that even Amazon would envy. The officials allegedly provided sensitive information about military and police operations so the cartel guys wouldn't have a bad day. They even escorted shipments. And when it comes to fees, things are very clear. Damaso Castro Saavedra, the deputy prosecutor, reportedly got $50,000 monthly just for alerting about any upcoming investigations. That's what I call solid protection against surprises. Juan Valenzuela Millan, the police commander, settled for $11,600 a month for putting the entire municipal police at the service of the organization. But be careful, this gentleman has extra charges for allegedly participating in the kidnapping and torture of a DEA source. Without a doubt, a complete professional in every area. I'll tell you more about the others later. Sovereignty, man. While in Mexico we clutch our pearls talking about sovereignty and how no one should dictate to us, the DEA classifies this network as a terrorist entity that undermines institutions. And they're not wrong. What we're seeing is a bombshell news story that shakes up the political landscape because it directly affects one of the most protected figures of the current regime. Rocha Moya, the same one who was nominated and fiercely defended both by that bastard Lopez Obrador and by the so-called welfare maid Claudia Sheinbaum, is now in the sights of Judge Catherine Polk. And although everything seems to indicate that up to this moment that son of a bitch Rocha Moya is still in Mexico, probably very calm, counting on hugs not bullets, the shadow of New York is long and very dark. The Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs has said that the United States has requested the arrest for extradition purposes of the accused, but has pointed out that that country has not sent any evidence in its request. See, Chachas always ask for evidence. even when the accusations are clearer than his pissed-off chimpanzee face every morning. Rocha has defended his innocence and claims that the accusation is an attack on the fourth transformation. Yeah, sure, poor Morenistas, the police are such heroes. But the police could have stopped the accused from being arrested. The charges against Rocha Moya were announced Wednesday by Clayton and the director of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration.
La DEA, Terrence C. Cole.
They include, as I mentioned, conspiracy to import narcotics, but also possession of machine guns, explosive devices, and conspiracy to possess these weapons. The crimes carry a minimum sentence of 40 years, and the prosecution could even seek life imprisonment. Senator Insunza, also former Secretary General of Sinaloa, faces the same charges and penalties. By the way, this little angel, one of those accusing Maru Campos of treason for the issue of DEA agents in an operation in Chihuahua, Rocha, for his part, has insisted on rejecting the accusations and claims that they violate Mexico's sovereignty. They are baseless and untrue, and that will be proven conclusively at the appropriate time, he has posted on his X profile. Insunza has also defended his innocence on his social media. I was born and raised in the municipality of Badiraguato, Sinaloa, and I am proud of that. There are those who think that this fact alone allows them to assume that those of us who come from there are criminals, he has stated. Honestly, these bastards have no shame. On the list of officials from Sinaloa, all accused of the same crimes and facing the possibility of the same sentences, also included are the former Secretary of Administration and Finance of the state, Enrique Diaz-Vega, the Deputy Prosecutor of the State Prosecutor's Office, Damaso Castro Saavedra, the former Chiefs of the Investigative Police, Marco Antonio Almanza Aviles and Alberto Jorge Contreras Núñez, the former Secretary of Public Security of Sinaloa, Gerardo Mendez, the former Deputy Director of the State Police, Jose Antonio Dionisio Hipólito, the Mayor of Culiacán, Juan de Dios Gómez Mendívil, and the former high-ranking commander of the Culiacán Municipal Police, Juan Valenzuela Millán. The latter is accused by United States authorities of participating in the kidnapping and murder of a DEA informant and a relative of that person. United States authorities state that the Sinaloa cartel has allied itself with politicians and corrupt officials who have sold their positions in exchange for large bribes that reached millions of dollars. They also accuse Mexican police officers of participating in the violence and reprisals of the criminal group, including kidnappings and murders, as well as protecting drug shipments and allowing traffickers to commit brutal acts of violence freely and without consequences. The security forces received orders from politicians or prosecutors who protected the leaders of the Sinaloa cartel from being investigated, arrested, or detained. They are also accused of giving key information to the leaders of the army and security forces to make their operations easier. I quote directly, "The Sinaloa cartel not only traffics deadly drugs, but it is a designated terrorist organization that uses corruption and bribery to promote violence and profit," Cole stated in the press release from the United States Attorney's Office. The accused allegedly used their positions of trust to protect the cartel's operations, thus facilitating the entry of drugs. Deadly, but it is a designated terrorist organization, as stated in the press release from the United States Attorney's Office. Ronald Johnson in Mexico has supported the announcement of the charges and has emphasized the shared commitment of both countries in the fight against drug trafficking. He has said that the corruption that facilitates organized crime and harms both countries will be investigated and prosecuted in all cases where the jurisdiction of the United States applies. Verbatim, Sinaloa cartel. Bilateral relations between both countries since the arrival of Trump worsened by the death of Latales. Instead, it was a terrorist group meant to guard the buses, suspected of joining a security operation unknown to the federal government. In that context, the Foreign Ministry stated in the press release that the accusation against the governor and the other 9 officials was made public. Of states.
Tratados. Y por eso,
literally the cartel of estrangement to the U.S. Embassy. What makes me laugh the most, or maybe nauseous, I don't even know anymore, is the deathly silence of Claudia Sheinbaum. It traffics deadly drugs, but it's also an organization meant to protect, as stated in the visa communique, because of its dangerous connections. The response from the Chachicera, "I have no knowledge." Of course, that's how it is for the United States establishment.
conecta cuando les conviene.
Literally the 40-year-old cartel and the removal of state powers. For them, a hug and an "I didn't know anything." Well, now the idiot knows. Lethal drugs, which is to protect the cartel, declared in the statement by the prosecutor's office Zambada, that man who seemed to have a better schedule than any Secretary of State, stated at the time that he met several times with Rocha Moya. What a surprise. They probably got together to discuss avocado crop rotation or to exchange chilorio recipes. Do you remember that I recently told you during a Sinaloa lethal drugs? It's not just a terrorist organization protecting cartel operations, as declared in the statement. Well, here we are. And wait, because if we look at Tamaulipas, they must be sweating bullets too. Americo Villarreal decided that for legal advice, he needed someone with, let's say, experience in tough cases. Here, word for word, the Sinaloa cartel. Note to keep in mind, if you want to know how to evade the law, hire whoever defends the cartel.
De forma más creativa.
Some call it administrative efficiency, but it is actually a designated terrorist organization protecting the cartel's operations, as stated in the statement. On the northern border, Marina del Pilar also had her visa canceled while her criminal connections are being investigated. But don't worry, it's surely just a bureaucratic mix-up at the consulate. They probably thought that governing and negotiating were synonyms in the Fourth Transformations dictionary. And these are just to mention a few. Literally, the idea that Claudia won't finish the 6-year term doesn't seem like such a far-fetched or crazy idea anymore. Could it be? We'll see. Once again, reality. Lethal drugs and a terrorist group protecting the cartel, according to the United States Attorney's Office, until it happens. But don't worry, these bastards, hypocrites, cynical sons of bitches will surely say tomorrow that it's all, literally, an international plot to destabilize the transformation. I can already hear them. The Sinaloa cartel traffics lethal drugs, but it's also a terrorist organization designated to protect the cartel's operations. That's all from me. Not without first reminding you that in this country, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between one and the other, wearing the same uniform and getting paid from the same payroll. Literally, whose hands we're in and where we stand. It's slipping through our fingers. We defend ourselves by coming together as a society. Designated to protect cartel operations, we defend ourselves by raising awareness in our communities. In the emergency statement, it's a battle between Mexico and Morena. Literally, the Sinaloa cartel traffics deadly drugs, but it is also a designated terrorist organization. Thanks to you, this channel is still active. It's very important to subscribe, like, and press the bell to receive notifications. State Prosecutor's Office.
Gracias.